In 1983, D.H. Morgan Manufacturing got their start. The California-based company didn't produce much over its 18 years, but they made the most of what they did, building some of the biggest, fastest, and most iconic coasters of their time. The company was founded by Dana Morgan, the son of Arrow's co-founder Ed Morgan, and by 2001, he was ready to retire and sold his assets to Chance Industries. We were left with 9 projects of all shapes and sizes, all of which are still operating to this day. And today, we're gonna put all bias aside and find out which one is the tallest, fastest, longest, best paced, and rank them up based on prime ride time. These are the coasters of D.H. Morgan, by the numbers. If you're new to the series, prime ride time starts when the train starts to pick up speed off the lift, and it ends when the train hits the final brakes. Mid-course brake runs are left into the prime ride time, but if it slows the train down too much, it'll extend the ride time but hurt the pacing. With the help of Google Maps and the Pythagorean theorem, I'm able to take out the lift, station, and brakes from the overall length, so the number on your screen will not match the number on RCDB. In 9th place with 37 seconds is the Santa Monica West Coaster at Pacific Park. When you talk about cultural icons, this is one of the most famous coasters in the world. The Santa Monica Pier is famous. It's always being shown on TV. It was even featured in Grand Theft Auto, and you can, in fact, ride this coaster, but there, it's known as Leviathan. This is sitting right in the boardwalk, so it's not going to be very big. It's 55 feet tall, that's second to last, but it doesn't really have a main drop. It just dips into a downward helix, staying far enough above the pier to stay out of reach of the other guests. Because of this, it only maxes out at 35 miles an hour. That top speed probably achieved at the very end of the ride. That dip off the final helix that plows into the station. It's a very weird layout given its setting, and with barely over 1,100 feet of track, it's by far the shortest Morgan of the bunch. It doesn't move very fast through its course, just under 30 feet per second, but that's not quite last place. In 8th place with 44 seconds is Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood. Here's the only coaster that isn't a Morgan original. They basically RMC'd this Arrow before RMC was RMC. Steel Phantom was a rough 10-year-old Arrow looper with a massive train layout, once standing as the tallest coaster in the world. Morgan kept the first half the same, but replaced those inversions with ejector airtime hills. What we got was a very short ride, but insanely forceful and unbelievably smooth. 44 seconds is very short for a hyper, as this only covers about 2,500 feet of track, ranking 7th. That max drop dives down 228 feet, right into this ravine. That's all the way up at 2nd place. Also second in speed, topping out at 85 miles an hour. With all that speed and being a short ride, I thought this would dominate in pacing, but no. This is actually in the lower half, only 6th place at 58.1 feet per second. In 7th place with 54 seconds is Steel Eel at SeaWorld San Antonio. Yes, Morgan is a hyper factory, but this one doesn't quite make the cut. Standing at 150 feet, this is a mini hyper, and it's down at 7th place in height. What it lacks in height, it makes up for in airtime, so don't be fooled by Steel Eel. That 150-foot drop gets the train up to 65 miles an hour, also 7th, barely passing the 3,000 foot mark, finishing 6th place in length. This does have a long, tall mid-course brake run, and in my experience, it does hit kinda hard. It stands so high, it's able to get some of that speed back in the second half, and on my last rides in 2022, it seems like it was letting up a bit, making that second half run a lot faster. Still, based on the POV that I timed, it gave a 54-second ride time, and the train covers just over 56 feet per second, good for 7th. In 6th place with 62 seconds is Quicksilver Express at Gilroy Gardens. West Coaster is kind of a mine train, but Quicksilver Express is a true mine train. Technically, the only one built by Morgan. This stands 38 feet tall, which is last place, but just like West Coaster, it doesn't have a main drop. It just stays close to that terrain, winding around at 32 miles an hour, which is also last, covering over 1,700 feet of track, which is only second worst. Mind you, this is a mine train. It's being put up against some enormous coasters, so its 28.1 feet per second is in last place, almost 2 feet per second behind West Coaster. In 5th place with 68 seconds is Steel Force at Dorney Park. On this list, this is the first traditional Morgan hyper. These are all about height, length, and speed, the way a hyper should be. With a 205-foot drop, Steel Force is tied for 3rd with 2 other coasters, maxing out at 75 miles an hour, which is also tied for 3rd. It goes all the way out along the river, has a big turnaround element, and makes its way back, going into a series of airtime hills. This all takes up over 4,600 feet of track, which is the second highest on the list, and it covers 68.5 feet per second, which is also second. Morgan built 3 very similar hypers, and stat-wise, this one is definitely the most impressive, covering more track in less time. I may not be the biggest fan of these traditional Morgan hypers, but this does stand out as the better one. In 4th place with 71 seconds is Wild Thing at Valleyfair. Here we have traditional hyper number 2, and this one stands taller than the others at 207 feet, but its drop is only 196 feet. That puts it in 6th place and kinda makes it a fake hyper, just like Magnum. Anyway, that shorter drop cost at 1 mile an hour. That max speed of 74 miles an hour also ranking 6. It also has less track than the others, still covering a pretty good 4,510 feet and ranking 4th. Despite a very harsh mid-course brake run, making those final hills much slower than they should be, this is still 3rd in pacing, about 5 feet behind Steel Force at 63.5 feet per second. In 3rd place with 73 seconds is Mamba at Worlds of Fun. There has been a lot of talk about this one over the last 2 years. These traditional Morgan hypers are known for turning up the mid-course brake so much and nearly stop, but this one was either turned off or turned way down. This makes that finale a lot better and improves the pacing. Under its normal operation, of the 3 traditional hypers, this takes the longest to complete the course, 5 seconds longer than Steel Force, which has about the same track length. Mamba is 3rd in length, sandwiched between Steel Force and Wild Thing, but it's 4th in pacing, 6.5 feet per second behind Steel Force, and 1.5 feet per second behind Wild Thing. When it comes to height and speed, it's identical to Steel Force. 205 foot drop, 75 miles an hour, tied for 3rd. In 2nd place with 74 seconds is Superman Ultimo Escape at Six Flags Mexico. This is Morgan's last coaster, opening in 2004. I know what you're thinking. How did Dana Morgan retire in 2001 and still open a coaster in 2004? Well, this was built in 2001 and meant to open in 2002, but there was a lot of red tape from the government, and construction finally completed on time for the 2004 season. This is considered the best of the Morgan hypers, and I'll have to take their word for it. This starts with a really interesting pre-lift section. It kinda reminds me of what RMC does, and I added this to the prime ride time, tacking on 12 seconds. It rises up 205 feet. That's 3rd place and the same as Mamba and Steel Force. It falls just short of 75 miles an hour, good for 5th. You also have to shave off about 1,200 feet of non-prime ride track, leaving it with less than 4,400 feet, that's also 5th. Just to be consistent, its pacing lines up with the rest of its stats, placing just behind Mamba in 5th place, 59.1 feet per second. It may be the best hyper, but it's not because of the stats. It's gotta be that layout. It doesn't feature any straight airtime hills until after the brake run. Everything is twisted. And speaking of that brake run, it doesn't seem to do much, and non-Morgan hypers, that can make or break the ride. In 1st place with 95 seconds is Steel Dragon 2000 at Nagashima Spaland. When you look at the companies that have owned the title for World's Tallest Coaster, it's aerodynamics, it's intimate, and for a very short period of time, it was Morgan. This company with 9 coasters happened to build one that's 318 feet tall, sporting a drop of 306.8 feet, almost 80 feet taller than Phantom's Revenge at number 2. This isn't much different from the normal hypers, it's just 50% bigger and longer. It may have been surpassed in height, but no other coaster has ever surpassed the 8,000 foot mark. Taking away the lift, station, and brake run, it's left with almost 6,500 feet of prime ride track. That clears the rest of the field by almost 2,000 feet. When you build a coaster this size, it's gonna be a clean sweep in the stat department. At 95 miles an hour, it's 10 miles an hour better than Phantom's Revenge. Its pacing of 70.2 feet per second is also number 1, but that's less than 2 feet per second better than Steel Force. With all that extra speed, it wears off over that 8,000 feet of track. Steel Force nearly caught it, but still, Steel Dragon 2000 is king. That's a wrap on the coasters of D.H. Morgan, by the numbers. Let me know if anything here surprised you, or confirmed something you already knew. I figured Steel Force would show up better than Mamba or Wild Thing, and with the exception of Mamba when the trims are turned off, Steel Force seems to be held in the highest regard when it comes to the 3 Morgans in the Cedar Fair chain. I was surprised that Phantom's Revenge didn't have the best pacing, being so fast and so short. I thought maybe it would be number 2, and it was all the way down at number 6. I was also surprised that Steel Force came so close to Steel Dragon 2000 in pacing. Usually, size and speed will dictate pacing, but Steel Dragon is just so long, it nearly lost its number 1 spot. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like, and if you're new here and want to see more content like this, please give me a sub. I have a playlist with other videos in this series. Also, check out my links below for my Discord server, and my second channel where I post copyright-free off-ride footage, and my baseball channel if you love baseball like I do. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.